Today, we're taking a road trip to Vienna, giving me a chance to share not just the playing graphs, but also my commentary along the way. I had a chance to take part in the 2024 IDA hydrodynamic competition held in the pool few minutes outside of Vienna. Traveling there from Kraków, where I'm based, was relatively quick, taking only a few hours. However, we picked a slightly longer route with few relaxing breaks along the way. If you're ever competing, arriving at least one night before the event is a great practice to ensure you're fully rested on the big day. The last thing you want is to waste all those hours of hard training simply because you were exhausted from traveling on the competition day. We arrived in Vienna on Friday evening and registered right away. This decision paid off as we could skip the early Saturday morning registration and head straight to the pool just before the official briefing. For this competition, I signed up for all 4 disciplines, which were split across 2 days. Static apnea and dynamic no-fins took place on Saturday, while dynamic and dynamic bifins were scheduled for Sunday. Saturday began with static, a discipline that tests your ability to hold your breath while floating motionless on the surface of the water. As you can see in the footage, a safety team member unexpectedly pulled the noodle from under my legs at the start of my attempt. This wasn't agreed upon beforehand and could have granted me a restart if I had chosen to request it. According to IDA rules, safety personnel are not allowed to touch athletes unless there is an emergency. Since this was meant to be a relatively easy attempt for me, I didn't let it bother me too much. However, I provided feedback to the main judge later to ensure this wouldn't happen to other athletes. Despite the minor distraction, I secured an easy white card with a performance of 5 minutes and 35 seconds, placing me 10th overall. This result landed me right in the middle of the ranking, which was exactly what I had planned for. It was a great way to start the competition and build the momentum for the rest of the weekend. Later that day, I participated in dynamic no-fins, where athletes swim underwater without the use of fins, relying solely on their body movement for propulsion. On the screen, you can see the heart rate recorded during the dive using a Polar H10 chest strap and hear a synthesized heartbeat sound matched with the dive progression. The orange point on the graph will move as the dive progresses. At any stage, current heart rate and the time spent underwater is displayed in the corner of the screen. Competing in 2 events on the same day can be challenging. Recovery time between attempts is often too short, and I could still feel the fatigue from the earlier static attempt. This was also the case the following day when I performed dynamic bifins after my dynamic attempt. Some athletes excel despite such scheduling challenges, but I've learned that if I want to perform at my absolute best, I should stick to 1 event per day. This is a scheduling strategy used in major competitions like the World Championships and other large-scale freediving events. For dynamic no-fins, or DNF for short, my goal was to surpass my previous competition personal best of 109 meters, achieved during the last year's Polish National Championships. During my dive, I've noticed an interesting detail. My heart rate didn't drop below 40 beats per minute, which is unusual compared to my training dives. There are many possible reasons for this discrepancy, including competition stress, residual fatigue from static, or even the unfamiliar venue. Timing also plays a role. Your body may respond differently depending on the time of day. Even with these challenges, my dive followed a typical 6-stage pattern observed in most long dives published on my channel. The first stage, pre-dive spike. The HR rises sharply just before submersion, driven by the final full breath and packing. Second stage is the initial drop. Once submerged, the HR starts to decrease. Third stage, stabilization. This is where the mammalian dive reflex, or MDR for short, kicks in, causing the heart rate to drop further as your body adapts to apnea, cold water, and pressure. I'll explain how I interpret the remaining 3 stages later during the dynamic bifins dive, as the graph paints a more clear image than the one we can observe during this no-fins attempt. The dive went smoothly for the most part, but the challenge became evident as I approached 100 meters. My turn at this distance was executed well, but as I pushed further, my technique began to deteriorate. This drop in form is a common occurrence during dives close to an athlete's limits. Fatigue causes the muscles to work anaerobically, leading to lactic buildup. Combined with hypoxia, this makes every movement increasingly difficult. In my case, you can see how my shoulders began to loosen and my legs spread wider, reducing my hydrodynamic efficiency. This loss of form demands more energy and increases the risk of blackout if pushed too far. To avoid receiving a red card, I ended my dive at 123 meters, surpassing my previous competition personal best by 14 meters and placing me 9th overall. Sunday started with dynamic, a discipline where athletes usually use a monofin to cover the longest possible distance underwater. I was optimistic about beating my personal best of 175 meters, but the competition setup didn't go as planned. I entered the water just as the 2-minute countdown began, leaving me little time to relax and prepare. At the time, I didn't realize I could request an additional minute from the judge, which would have been easily granted under AIDA regulations. This small oversight impacted my performance significantly. If you're new to the sport of freediving, you might wonder why relaxation is so critical. Freediving isn't just about physical endurance, it's a mental game as well. Even the most well-trained athletes can struggle if they can't calm their minds before the dive. Underwater, your brain's survival instinct will try to convince you to surface as quickly as possible. Overcoming this instinct requires a calm, focused mindset. Without proper relaxation, it's easy to fall short of your potential no matter how much time you've spent training. For my dynamic attempt, the lack of proper relaxation led me to surface at 153 meters, well below my personal best. Although I still earned an easy white card, I couldn't help but feel this dive didn't reflect my true capabilities. The final event was dynamic bifins, a discipline I have been consistently practicing throughout the season. I felt confident about surpassing 150 meters, especially since my training results in this discipline had been so reliable. Let's revisit the final 3 stages of the 6-stage dive pattern. Number 4 is the heart rate minimum. This is the most relaxing part of the dive, where the heart rate plateaus at its lowest level. The 5th stage is the struggle phase. The HR begins to rise, signaling the start of the most challenging part of the dive. Here, technique often degrades and the risk of blackout increases. The last stage is the recovery. Upon surfacing, the HR doesn't spike immediately, but rises gradually as oxygenated blood starts to circulate. My confidence in dynamic bifins was somehow shaken by an early mistake during 50-meter turn, where I unintentionally mixed a monofin turn with a standard wall turn. This misstep disturbed my rhythm and wasted valuable energy. Although my 100-meter turn was smoother, the previous error had already taken its toll. By the time I reached 150 meters, my form had improved slightly, but the accumulated fatigue from earlier mistakes limited my distance. I surfaced at 173 meters, setting a new competition personal best and placing me 7th in this discipline. After 2 intense days of competition, I finished 6th overall out of 23 male participants. Considering this was only my 3rd competition, I'm incredibly pleased with the results. More importantly, I've learned valuable lessons that will for sure shape my approach to future events. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this detailed recap, please consider subscribing to my channel for more insights into the world of freediving.